Hello students. This is the video where I'm going to answer the questions you asked me in your introductions. Thank you for your patience. I put these into a survey and found the most popular answers, and I'm going to answer a whole bunch of them, but I know nobody wants to hear their professor talk for an hour. So I'm going to give myself a time limit. I'm going to give myself 30 seconds to talk about each topic. All right, so wish me luck. So here we go. They're in some different categories, but let's get to it. Okay, 30 seconds begins. Why did you come to South Korea to teach? When I finished university, I had lived all my life in Canada. So I knew how Canadians thought and Canadians lived, and I thought Canadian culture was just the way things are. But I also knew that that's not right, that people live in different ways. So I wanted to live somewhere else to try something different. At the time, Korea was a good place to pay off the huge student loans I had, so I chose Korea. After I came to Korea, I loved it here, so I stayed. Can you speak Korean? Well, I'll be honest, I've lived here quite a long time and I've studied off and on for a lot of that. My listening is all right. I can understand quite a lot of what I hear. I really like Korean movies and old Korean music, but my speaking is not my strong point, so you probably won't hear me speaking Korean. Next question. Can you speak other languages? What other language would you choose? Like all Canadians, we studied French until the end of high school. And then I also studied it as part of my English major. I had to study a foreign language. So I also studied 2 semesters of French in university. I was pretty close to fully conversational in French. If I could choose to study another language, I might choose an Asian language because I love studying Asian politics and history, or I might choose French. What was your first impression of Seoul? I come from a town of 5,000 people. There are probably more cows in my hometown than people. So going from a place where my entire town could probably fit inside Gyeongbokgung to a city like Seoul was amazing and overwhelming. I was gaping out the window of the car driving me home from the airport, and I was amazed that this city never shuts down. The lights stay on all night. Okay, next category: likes, dislikes, suggestions. First question, do you like K-pop? What K-pop artists do you like? I do like K-pop because it takes musical traditions from all over the world, mashes them together, and somehow out of those ingredients creates something uniquely Korean, which is kind of something neat about Korean culture in general. Unfortunately, my K-pop, it just changes so quickly, so my K-pop knowledge is out of date now. The K-pop stuff that I know is stuff like Soonyashide and 2NE1, and After School, not the new stuff, although I like BTS. Which genre of music I like? It really depends. I like good music in any genre, and any genre can be good or terrible. But in different situations, when I'm driving, I like loud, exciting music like rock. When I'm walking, I like quieter music like singer-songwriter stuff. And when I'm studying, I need music with no lyrics, so things like electronica, ambient, or even classical music is what I prefer then. Could you recommend a city to travel in Canada? I haven't lived in Canada for a long time, but I highly recommend Vancouver. It's a beautiful city with really friendly people. Most cities in Canada are hard to get around because they're big and there's not much public transportation, so rent a car. But when we visited Canada, my parents-in-law loved Victoria the most, which is the capital of BC. It's on Vancouver Island. It's an old English-style town, and it's very pretty. What is your favorite dessert? For dessert, it's all about chocolate for me mostly. I love sweet things, so something like pecan pie is good. Chocolate brownies, if they have like really thick fudge, if they're like heavy and thick tasting, that's really nice. But I don't like cake brownies where it's like a muffin or a piece of cake. I'm allergic to ice cream, so I can't have things with ice cream. And I also like apple and banana flavored things like apple crisp or banana bread. What horror movies do you recommend? Oh, I'm gonna have to talk fast for this one. In fact, I'm gonna open up my folder so I can see some of the titles that are on my computer right now. Yes, I have an entire horror movie folder on my computer because I really do like them that much. Some of the scariest horror movies I know: The Thing from 1982, it's about a shape-shifting alien. The Descent is an underground cave horror movie. It Follows is one of the best recent horror films. Attack the Block is horror comedy with space monsters. Cabin in the Woods, the more horror movies you've seen, the more you'll enjoy that. And of course, with zombies, 28 Days Later, Dawn of the Dead, the new one and the old one, The Girl with All the Gifts, and a film called Zombie by Lucio Fulci from, I think, 1979 are some of my favorites. Whew, that was hard. Korea stuff. Questions about Korean life and culture and things like that. First question, what was a memorable culture shock you experienced in Korea? One thing I loved to do, or in Canada I loved to do, was to collect idioms, like old-style expressions and sayings, something like, he needs that like a hole in the head, instead of just, he doesn't need that. But when I came to Korea, those idioms required me to explain them to my friends who didn't speak English as a native. So I had to take all of those idioms out of my speaking to be understood clearly. My speaking is very clear and simple now, but it's not as fun. What's your favorite Korean snack? Okay, I love Korean snacks because they're not too sweet or salty. Canadian snacks are all too sweet, too salty, or too oily. Think about Doritos. But Korean snacks like jolipong or the ojingo dangkong, the peanut squid balls, those things are great because they're not too sweet. And, you know, if you eat the first one of Canadian snacks, by the last one, you can't taste them anymore. But with jolipong, you can taste the sweetness all the way through. Unique characteristic about Korea compared to other countries. One thing I love and that I learned in studying Korean history is Korea has been through so many horrible events. War, colonization, democracy movements with violent suppression, financial crisis, and Korean people are really resilient. They come back from difficult times. They come together in difficult times in a really cool way, and I really respect and admire the resilience of Korean people. They never stay down. What's your favorite Korean food? It depends on the time of day. In the morning for breakfast, I love nureungjitang and anything made with nureungji, the scorched rice. When they put nureungji in the pan at the end of a meal, so good. At lunchtime, I think torsut bibimbap, a hot pot bibimbap, is the best lunch. It's healthy, it's filling, and the torsut, a really hot torsut can scorch the rice, so you get nureungji there. But at dinner time, I love things like jimtak, and I especially love going to a town like Chuncheon Dakgalbi or Andong Jimtak, traveling around Korea to try the different specialty foods. If Korea and Canada played each other in a sports game, who would you root for? To be honest, I've lived in Korea and I've watched Korean media for so many years. In most sports, I would probably cheer for the Korean because they're the one I saw on TV and the one my wife is excited about and stuff. Except ice hockey. If Korea and Canada are playing in ice hockey, I want Canada to win. But other than ice hockey, Korea is the country where I live. If it's soccer or really any other sport except ice hockey, go Korea. More serious questions. What's the hardest thing about living in Korea? One of the hard things, but I've made this hard for myself, is that It's a lot harder living in a country when you're not totally fluent in the language. But that's my own fault. I need to study more. The other hard thing is that your friends, if you have a lot of foreign friends, they go home, they go back to their country and leave me here. And every time somebody does that, it gets harder to try and go out and meet somebody new because it might happen again too. What are some things on your bucket list? Interesting question. I usually don't think about things in terms of bucket lists. One thing I'd like to do is finish checking off all of the UNESCO World Heritage Sites in Korea. I've visited most of them, but not all. I need to visit the Netherlands, which is where my ancestors are from. I've never been there, but I've heard it's beautiful. And I really just want to try all the foods from all the different places. That's one thing I really love when I travel. What was the most impressive class you ever took? Some impressive classes I remember in graduate school. One was about Korean development and how Korea developed it with fast economic growth. Another was the history of modernity, how modernity came to Korea. In university, I loved my creative writing classes. I still love writing now. And I also enjoyed my aesthetics class, which is a philosophy area that talks about the nature of beauty and art. Just fascinating to me. Okay. Do you have a motto? I haven't thought about this very much, but if I have a motto, I might have two. One is be kind, always be kind. I find myself saying that to my son a lot. And the other one is stay woke. Woke is a word that is used in activist groups to mean understand and be aware of injustice where it happens and do what you can to fight it. As a white man, the world is an easier place for me to live than a lot of other groups. And I need to be woke. I need to learn about how other people live in order to be part of the solution in making life better and fixing injustice rather than being part of injustice. Sorry, I went over time. So be kind and stay woke. What area of Korean studies do you like? As I said before, Korea's modern history, the history of Korean development, is really interesting to me. I'm also very intrigued by the way that all around Asia, history is such an important tool for countries. The way that countries tell their history can be really important, and it can also cause trouble between countries, which is something that I haven't ever seen that kind of thing happen between Canada and USA, for example, not at the level it happens between Korea and Japan. Soongsil and education stuff. Can you recommend a restaurant near Soongsil University? To be honest, the restaurant scene around Soongsil is not that great. A little up the hill on the street behind the McDonald's, there is a South Asian restaurant with Thai and Vietnamese food I like. There's a place called Gohyang Samgyetang, I believe. They have good dukbaegi bulgogi and samgyetang, which I always eat when I feel sick. And after that, it starts getting pretty thin. There's a hand-drip coffee shop on one of the side streets, but there aren't many good choices around Soongsil, unfortunately. Okay, next question. What's your favorite place in Soongsil? To be honest, because I'm not a student, I don't spend much time around the student lounges and hangout areas, so I can't really talk about that stuff. What I do like to do is just find an empty classroom, get all my work and spread it out in an empty classroom somewhere and just do my work there where I have some quiet. I do like walking. And I love that Soongsil has so many stairs, and uphill and behind the Soongsil campus, there are some nice places for a good walk. Do you think there's a problem with English education in Korea? I would say the biggest problem is that Koreans generally think of English as a subject in school, which means that they open the book at the beginning of class, think about English, use English. When class is finished, they close it and they don't think about English again until next week when class starts again. Not everybody, of course, please understand. But what that means is English is not, Koreans don't need English in their everyday life. And until they do, it's going to stay just an academic subject, and Koreans will feel perfectly happy to forget their English as soon as their class is finished. Is SSU different than other Korean schools? SSU is an interesting school, and I think it's a perfectly fine university. I've talked to some people who say that the programmers that come out of Soongsil are really good. But I would say focusing on some essential nature of your university is not the right approach. It's a much better idea to use your university time to think about ways to develop your skills, your network, your connections. That is how you can make university benefit your future as much as possible. What advice would you give to a student who thinks English is too hard? Coming back to what I said earlier about English education in Korea, English is hard, but it's like any skill that you can practice. If you practice it, if you do it a lot, you will get better. There's no trick or secret. The nice thing about that is if you do the work, you can get better. So do the work, put in the time, and you can get better. There's no magic trick, but working works. All right, well, that is all of the most popular questions that you voted for in the poll. I hope you've enjoyed learning about me. I've enjoyed learning about you in your videos and your work that you've given me. And I'll see you again in the next video.